the guardian of Loch Ness. Previously, Alexander and his companions answered the urgent call to rescue the Oasis de Loire, Makeda's African vessel, which had vanished into the icy waters of Inverness after a sea beast's attack tested the courage and faith of its captive crew. During repairs on the damaged ship, carried out with the aid of the Jacobins, an unexpected connection was revealed between the group and Jacobus Stewart through Nevim, a druid who, decades earlier, had healed the monarch as a child, opening doors of imperial hospitality and mutual trust. In a prophetic dream, the timeless ancestor visited Alexander with precise instructions. The solution was not defeat, but dialogue. Through an ingenious trap involving the capture and release of the cub, a tacit agreement was sealed with the mother creature, not in words, but in the only language that consciousnesses of different species can share: action with unmistakable intent. The beast was not vanquished, it was understood, and that difference, they discovered, was the only one Excalibur had been waiting for its bearer to demonstrate. In this new episode, we shall discover together how, when everyone expected the order to set sail for Amesbury, Alexander postponed it. And that decision, which the crew interpreted as caution, was in truth the recognition that something remained incomplete. The colossal shadow he had glimpsed at dawn abandoning the salt sea and winding its way upriver was not a threat that needed to be eliminated. It was an invitation that needed to be accepted. The cub, the very one they had captured and released, whose eyes had displayed a disturbing intelligence even amid the chaos of battle, was returning to a place that had existed before any human name had ever been given to those lands. Following that shadow through the River Ness in the silence of pilgrims, Alexander and his companions would reach Loch Ness at the very moment the cub arrived as well. And what they would witness there, that eruption of pure joy from a creature that had finally come home, would demand the most difficult decision of the entire journey. Not how to defeat something, but how to protect something. And the protection they would devise would prove more enduring than any battle one could ever be, because it would be a legend. And some legends, forged with wisdom and compassion at the precise moment they need to exist, last forever. The captain's decision. The crew awaited the order to set sail. Alexander gazed at the horizon, and between what everyone expected and what he saw, there lay a distance that only he could measure. The sky above Inverness bled in shades of blood red and deep amber, that kind of twilight that announces not the end of a day, but the end of something greater, something that had no name yet, but was felt in the bones with the certainty of things woven before any conscious choice could ratify them. Alexander stood motionless at the prow of the Oasis de Loire, a figure silhouetted against the spectacle of light, utterly still with that quality of stillness that is not passivity but concentration, the entire being converging upon an inner point where decisions that truly matter are made before any word can articulate them. The crew waited. The icy wind of the Highlands carried salt and portent in equal measure, and Alexander knew that wind far too well to ignore what it carried this time. Sostrato approached with measured steps that acknowledged, without needing to name it, one of those moments in which Alexander waged his most intense battles with himself. The Greek knew that specific silence, not the silence of a captain deliberating over routes or provisions, but the silence of someone who has already made the most difficult decision and is merely waiting for the rest of himself to catch up with what the deepest part already knows. Sostrato stood beside the captain without speaking, a gesture that was itself a form of loyalty. The loyalty of one who does not fill sacred silences with unnecessary words. The sea, now calmer after what had transpired in the preceding days, beat rhythmically against the hulls of the ships with that particular patience of oceans that have watched entire civilizations rise and vanish, and that, for this very reason, understand that the human decisions which truly matter rarely arrive in haste. And to you who accompany this crossing, who enter with us this territory where legends are not created by accident, but forged in specific moments by specific people who understood the weight of what they carried, I leave a simple but essential request. Like this video, subscribe to the channel, and leave your comment sharing what you feel. Each gesture of yours is a flame that joins the others, strengthening the invisible current that unites hearts across time and across the mysteries that await revelation. In doing so, you do not merely support this work, you become part of this tapestry. The story continues, and it is your presence that keeps the fire alive. When Alexander finally turned to the crew assembled on the main deck, his eyes carried that specific blend of determination and gentleness he had learned throughout the entire journey to be the rarest and most necessary combination of all. His voice was firm, yet without harshness, the firmness of one who has made an irrevocable decision and who, for that very reason, no longer requires insistence because the decision exists and does not depend on anyone's approval to exist. He said they would depart only when he held absolute certainty that peace would reign over the icy waters of Inverness, when the local fishermen could cast their nets without the terror of never returning to their homes. It was not merely a matter of strategy or duty, it was a matter of conscience. A true captain measures his greatness not only by the battles won, but by the lives protected even after victory. And there was something more. Something he did not speak aloud, yet which was present in every syllable. The intuition that what had occurred in those waters was not yet complete, that leaving now would be to abandon a chapter midway through, and that chapters abandoned midway through have the inconvenient habit of completing themselves without witnesses in ways no one foresaw and that afterward prove impossible to mend. Helena, observing the scene from a discreet corner of the deck, felt a wave of admiration pass through her chest with that quality of emotions that arrive before they are thought, that the body recognizes before the mind has finished processing them. Alexander's decision revealed layers of character she had been discovering across the entire journey. Not the arrogance of a conqueror, but the humility of someone who understood that true power resides in the capacity to serve, to protect the most vulnerable, to leave a legacy that transcends one's own existence. She thought of how many leaders would simply press onward, considering the mission complete after defeating the sea beast. But Alexander saw connections where others saw only isolated events, and what he saw there, the necessity of remaining, was not weakness or hesitation. It was precision. The precision of one who had learned that the moments that truly matter demand complete presence, not a hasty departure toward the next objective before the current one had revealed everything it had to reveal. When the ships dropped anchor in deeper waters, preparing for yet another night in the vicinity of Inverness, each member of the crew processed the decision in their own way, but all of them, without exception, understood that they sailed under the command of someone whose moral compass pointed always to the true north of integrity, not the north of the map, but that other north, deeper and more difficult to follow, which demands that one remain when departing would be far easier. The sea bore silent witness. Its waves struck the hulls with that regularity that is, at once, promise and warning. And in the depths, something watched. Something waited. Something that would soon alter the course of that story in ways no one could have imagined before it happened, because the things that truly change stories rarely announce their arrival. The return of the heroes. The crowd on the shore knew that something had changed before they knew what. It was the way the boats moved, not with the urgency of men returning from battle, but with the specific calm of those who carry something that must be delivered with care. The boats glided across the waters of the bay, cutting the mirrored surface with that quiet efficiency of coordinated oars. And as they drew closer to the shore, the crowd that swelled with each stroke revealed itself in all its emotional complexity. Relief mingled with admiration, mingled with that touch of reverent fear that surfaces in the presence of people who have done what you knew needed to be done, yet did not know was possible. Alexander stepped down from the boat with his characteristic humility, refusing to claim all the glory for himself, redirecting the praise toward the crew, toward all those who had risked themselves in the turbulent waters. It was not a performance of modesty. It was the genuine acknowledgement of a truth that Thula had taught with sacred water and northern lights. The conquests that truly matter are always collective, always woven by more hands than those that receive the credit. It was then that the crowd parted, forming a reverent corridor. Baker emerged, the eldest among the village elders, a figure whose deep wrinkles mapped not merely decades, but the specific quality of decades spent watching the sea with an attention that few can sustain for so long without it becoming mere habit rather than a permanent openness to what the sea has to say. His eyes, still penetrating despite his advanced age, fixed upon Alexander with an intensity that communicated immediately. What needed to be said was not gratitude. It was a warning. Baker walked slowly, leaning on a staff of wood polished by time and salt, each step measured with the deliberation of one who has learned that arriving too quickly at certain places wastes what the journey had to teach. When he stopped before Alexander, his gesture silenced the crowd instantly, not because he possessed authority imposed by any hierarchy, but because there was in his presence that quality belonging to those who carry genuine knowledge. And genuine knowledge, when it is at last about to be spoken, deserves silence. Baker spoke. His voice sounded like stones being dragged along the bed of an ancient river, rough yet laden with an authority that transcended any formal title. The beast had been sighted in the channel, in that narrow corridor where the River Ness met the salt sea. It had vanished at the precise moment it had sensed the approach of the ships, as though it possessed an intelligence capable of discerning friends from enemies, or perhaps something still more unsettling, as though it possessed a purpose that rendered every human category of threat or ally irrelevant. That behavior was not that of a common wild beast. It was that of something more complex, more ancient, more connected to those lands than any outsider could comprehend in a visit of days or weeks. Sostrato turned to Alexander with wide eyes, not of fear, but of that specific surprise belonging to one who realizes the captain had reached a conclusion before the event that would confirm it. How had he known? How had he foreseen that simply defeating the creature in open sea would not be enough? Alexander allowed himself the brief smile of one who recognizes a pattern others have not yet seen, and explained with the patience of a teacher before eager students. Some of the fish used to lure the sea beast had been freshwater fish, an apparently trivial observation that revealed a crucial truth about the creature's behavior. If the beast responded to freshwater fish, its hunting territory was not limited to the salt sea. It likely extended into areas where waters of different natures converged. The channel where the river emptied into the sea created precisely that environment, a point of transition where two aquatic worlds merged, forming a unique ecosystem rich in varied prey. It was logical to suppose that the beast, or others of its kind, would frequent that area with regularity, posing a continuous threat to the fishermen who depended on those same waters for survival. But there was something more that Alexander had not yet spoken aloud, something Baker had unwittingly confirmed. The creature had not simply fled. It had chosen a destination, and destinations chosen with that deliberation were, in his experience, invitations. The night of the vigil. There are celebrations that honor victories, and there are celebrations that are, in truth, ways of processing the fear that victory has not yet completely dissolved. The one in Inverness was, unmistakably, the latter. The night spread over Inverness like a velvet mantle embroidered with stars too countless to number. Bonfires were lit along the shore, creating circles of golden light that held the darkness at bay, but could not fully dispel the shadows dwelling in the minds of those who understood that the threat had not yet been entirely neutralized, that there was a specific distance between the beast was defeated in open battle and The waters are safe for those who cast their nets at dawn tomorrow. Alexander's crew, exhausted after days of tension and combat, longed for a warm plate of food and some minimally comfortable surface where they could rest their aching bodies. The village women had prepared a feast with the limited resources they possessed, seasoned with the boundless generosity of gratitude. Steaming cauldrons of fish stew, bread still warm from stone ovens, cheeses aged in mountain caves, mead fermented according to recipes handed down through generations. Alexander insisted that his crew eat first, serving them himself in a gesture that did not go unnoticed by the local inhabitants. For true leadership did not reside in commanding from an elevated position, but in serving from the foundation, in recognizing the shared humanity that connected captain and sailor, hero and ordinary person. Sostrato, seated near one of the larger bonfires, found himself surrounded by wide-eyed children who asked and asked again for the account of the battle against the sea beast. The Greek, never one to pass up the opportunity for a good story, described the creature as a leviathan rising from the darkest depths of the ocean, its scales reflecting the light of the setting sun like armor forged by the sea gods themselves, its eyes gleaming with an ancient and unfathomable intelligence. The children clung to one another, terrified and fascinated in equal measure, and their parents listened from the shadows with tolerant smiles, but also with that edge of genuine concern that no story of victory could entirely allay when the real question remained: what still lurked in the waters that sustained their lives? Baker kept his distance from the celebrations, seated on a smooth stone polished by centuries of tides, eyes fixed on the dark horizon where sky and sea became indistinguishable. Alexander, noticing that posture of one contemplating something others had not yet perceived, approached quietly and sat beside him without asking permission, recognizing that certain moments of shared wisdom transcended social formalities. The two men remained in silence for long minutes, joined by a common concern that neither needed to name because both felt it with the same sharpness. At last, Baker spoke, his voice low but laden with knowledge that came not from books, but from a lifetime spent observing the mysterious patterns of the sea and the creatures that inhabited it. The elder shared stories that his own grandfather had told him, narratives of creatures existing at the frontier between myth and reality, beings that the ancient Celts venerated as guardians of the portals between worlds. He spoke of how the Scottish Sea was not merely water and salt, but a repository of mysteries as deep as its own depths, a realm where natural laws sometimes bent before forces older than humanity itself. Baker warned Alexander that defeating a creature did not mean understanding it, and that understanding was not necessarily the same as controlling it. His words carried a prophetic weight that sent a shiver along Alexander's spine, that particular kind of foreboding that true adventurers learn never to ignore, for it frequently heralds the most significant turning points in their journeys. When Alexander finally withdrew to rest, sleep did not come with the ease his exhausted body deserved. Lying down and gazing through the small window at the star-filled sky, his mind could not disengage. It turned over Baker's words. It analyzed patterns he had observed in the beast's behavior, and something told him, with the certainty of intuitions that arrive from a place deeper than any reasoning, that the next chapter would be written not with swords and nets, but with understanding, and perhaps even with compassion for creatures that humans labeled as monsters simply because they did not comprehend them. With that thought, Alexander drifted into restless sleep, inhabited by visions of unexplored depths and ancient eyes watching from the underwater shadows. The dawn of revelations. The shadow Alexander saw at dawn did not move like a predator. It moved like a pilgrim, with that specific determination of one who knows exactly where they are going, because the destination existed before the journey. The aurora arrived at Inverness like a whispered promise of revelations, tinting the mists rising from the valleys with shades of rose and pale gold. Alexander woke before the first cock's crow, driven by that instinct every true adventurer develops over time, the capacity to sense when something significant is about to unfold, when the universe has prepared a scene that only those who rose early will have the privilege of witnessing. He dressed in silence and stepped out into the still, deserted streets of the village. The cold morning air bit into his lungs with that particular cleanliness of airs belonging to places still untouched by most of the marks that human presence imprints upon the environments where it settles. The mist moved like living creatures, ethereal serpents sliding between the stone and timber buildings, transforming the familiar into the mysterious with that ease the Highland mists have possessed since before any human record. Alexander walked to the edge of the bay where the waters still slept in a deceptive calm. The surface was so smooth that it perfectly mirrored the gradually brightening sky, creating the illusion that he stood between two identical worlds, suspended in a liminal space where the habitual and the extraordinary met without either having to yield. It was in that moment of silent contemplation that he noticed it, a subtle movement in the water. Not the rippling caused by wind or current, something more deliberate, more intentional, a disturbance rising from the deeper waters of the bay and moving with defined purpose toward the mouth of the river, where salt water and fresh water met in an eternally unresolved embrace. He crouched at the bank to gain a better perspective. He watched, transfixed, as that subaquatic presence continued on its course. There was none of the frantic urgency of a predator in pursuit of prey, nor the randomness of an animal merely migrating. There was intention in that movement, as though the creature knew precisely where it was going, as though it followed an invisible map engraved in an ancestral memory far older than any knowledge he himself could carry. Without wasting a moment, Alexander returned swiftly to the village. He went directly to the quarters where his most trusted companions rested and woke them with gentle but firm touches. Sostrato first, whose eyes opened immediately alert despite the sleep still heavy on his lids. Helena next, her intuition already telling her that something extraordinary was unfolding before Alexander had uttered a single word. He explained briefly what he had observed, his voice low but vibrating with contained excitement. He gave no orders. He extended an invitation. Who would like to join him on a journey of discovery whose final destination remained unknown? Minutes later, one of the boats glided silently across the bay, its occupants rowing with soft, coordinated strokes that barely disturbed the mirrored surface. The mist enveloped them like a phantasmal embrace, reducing visibility to a few meters in any direction. But Alexander kept his gaze fixed on the water ahead, following that subtle movement that only his trained eyes could detect. The creature seemed unaware that it was being followed, or perhaps it simply did not care, which was, in its own way, something still more unsettling to contemplate. It maintained a steady rhythm, ascending the River Ness with that determination that is not urgency, but certainty. Each bend of the river unveiled landscapes of wild, untouched beauty, places where the human hand had not yet imposed its mark upon nature's primitive canvas. And ahead of them, still partially concealed beneath the surface, the creature continued its ancestral journey, guiding them unknowingly, or guiding them with precise intent, toward a truth that would alter not only their lives, but the very fabric of the legends that would be told in that land for centuries to come. The recognition. There was something in those eyes that defied every available category. They were not the eyes of a beast. They were not the eyes of an ally. They were the eyes of someone who had decided, with all the sovereignty of one who makes genuine choices, to trust them. The journey upriver transformed itself into a silent meditation on the nature of seeking and purpose. The waters, which had begun salty and turbulent in the bay, grew progressively fresher and calmer, as though the river itself were guiding them toward a deeper state of contemplation, preparing their consciousnesses for an encounter that would demand a greater openness than any ordinary expectation could permit. It was in a shallower section of the river, where sunlight penetrated all the way to the rocky bed, creating dancing patterns of light and shadow with that particular beauty belonging to things that are beautiful without knowing they are beautiful, that the creature finally revealed itself completely. With a fluid movement that demonstrated perfect command over its massive body, it emerged partially from the water, allowing its head to break the surface. And what Alexander and his companions saw left them motionless, not with terror, but with recognition. It was the cub, that same young creature they had temporarily ensnared in their nets during the epic battle, whose eyes had displayed a disturbing intelligence even amid the chaos of combat. The recognition was mutual and instantaneous. The young beast turned its elongated head toward the boat, its large, dark eyes fixing directly upon Alexander. But there was no fear in that gaze, nor the defensive aggression one would expect from a wild creature confronted by those who had once captured it. There was something entirely different, something that defied all expectations and all preconceptions about the nature of these creatures of the deep. There was trust, a disconcerting trust, impossible to explain through conventional logic, as though the creature recognized in them not the hunters who had ensnared it, but the liberators who had chosen clemency over cruelty, compassion over conquest. As though it had understood, with some intelligence that required no language to operate, that the capture and the subsequent liberation had not been an act of power over it, but a form of communication, a proposal of coexistence delivered in the only language both sides could genuinely share. Sostrato, whose voice normally never failed him in moments of extraordinary discovery, found himself without words. He looked back and forth between the creature and Alexander, searching for some rational explanation for a behavior that contradicted everything he knew about animal instincts of self-preservation. Helena, with her sharpened sensitivity to the emotional currents flowing beneath the surface of events, whispered what everyone was thinking, but no one had dared to put into words. That creature did not fear them because it understood on some deep and primordial level that they posed no threat. More than that, it seemed to be inviting them to witness something important, to accompany it to the final destination of its journey. The creature submerged again, but did not flee. Instead, it continued its course upriver, maintaining a slightly slower rhythm, as though consciously allowing the boat to keep pace, permitting the humans who had proven themselves to be no predators to reach the place it was heading. Alexander instructed his companions to keep following the creature, but at a respectful distance, without attempting to surround or ensnare it. They were no longer hunters on a capture expedition. They were privileged witnesses being led towards something that transcended their personal missions, something that connected the mythological past with the tangible present in a manner that few humans would ever have the opportunity to experience. Each time the creature briefly surfaced, Alexander noticed details that had gone unobserved during the frenzy of battle in open sea. The scales covering its body displayed subtle iridescences of emerald green and deep blue when the light struck them at certain angles. There was a gracefulness in its movements that contradicted its considerable size, an elegance that spoke of millions of years of evolution perfectly adapted to the aquatic environment, a creature that had found its ideal form before humanity had learned to walk upright. The sacred lake. There are places that exist before the names given to them, that would exist if no human language had ever been invented to name them. Loch Ness was one of those places, and to recognize it was like recognizing a truth one has always known, but for which one has never found the words to speak. The river gradually widened, its current slowing until they nearly ceased, a sign that they were approaching the source, that point where the river reached the lake that gave it life. The mountains drew back slightly, opening into a broader valley covered by denser and more lush vegetation. The air changed in quality, growing heavier with moisture and laden with the fragrances of fertile earth and abundant plant life. That particular quality of airs belonging to places where nature has grown long enough to create its own atmosphere, unmistakable, felt before it is thought. Alexander sensed that they were arriving at a special place with the certainty of perceptions that arrive before any reasoning can intercede in their reception. One of those natural sanctuaries scattered across the world like points of power, where the veil between the ordinary and the extraordinary grows thinner, where forces older than any human name still maintain their dominion. And then, like a revelation that justified every journey ever undertaken, the lake opened before them. Loch Ness spread in a vastness that stole the breath, its dark and profound waters reflecting the sky like an immense mirror polished by hands that were not human. The surrounding mountains embraced the lake with an almost maternal protection, forming a natural amphitheater of stone and vegetation that had witnessed millennia of history without significant interference from human civilization. The water possessed a special quality, clarity at the surface that contrasted with the unfathomable darkness of the depths, as though the lake kept secrets it would reveal only to those worthy of receiving them, not through moral judgment, but through the capacity to receive what was being offered without immediately attempting to transform it into possession or advantage. Alexander felt at once that they had arrived at a sacred place, not in the sense of a place constructed for the practice of religion, but in the oldest and most fundamental sense, a place where forces more ancient than any human belief still operated with the naturalness of things that exist independently of being recognized. The creature, upon reaching the open waters of the lake, was transformed completely. All the caution and restraint it had displayed throughout the upriver journey evaporated in an instant, replaced by an eruption of pure, uncontained joy that could be interpreted in no other way. It dove into the depths only to emerge in spectacular leaps that launched its entire body above the surface, arching through the air before falling back with impacts that sent waves propagating outward in perfect concentric circles. Each leap was accompanied by a sound that echoed across the valley, a guttural, resonant cry that might have terrified those who did not understand its true meaning, but which, for those who witnessed the full context, was unmistakably a hymn of jubilation. It was the sound a weary traveler might make upon finally crossing the threshold of their home after a long and perilous journey. It was the sound of someone who had arrived. Helena watched with tears gleaming in her eyes, unashamed of them. She remarked that they were witnessing something rare and precious, the moment in which a being found exactly where it belonged in the world. Sostrato murmured that he had never witnessed anything like it in all his travels across the Mediterranean and beyond. There was something profoundly moving in seeing a creature so frequently labeled a monster, revealing emotions that seemed universally and deeply recognizable. The joy of arrival, the satisfaction of belonging, that specific sensation of being exactly where one ought to be, which every being who had ever felt displaced would recognize immediately, regardless of species. For hours, the crew remained on the lake, keeping a respectful distance as they watched the creature explore its new territory, diving into the depths, surfacing in different places each time, mapping every inch of that aquatic dominion it could now call its own. Occasionally, it glanced in the direction of the boat, but without alarm. It was as though it were sharing its joy with the only human witnesses to its journey, and Alexander felt his heart divided between the happiness of witnessing that scene and a growing concern about what that discovery would mean for the future. The revelation of truth. The most difficult decision was not what to do with the creature. It was what to do with what they knew about it, because knowledge without responsibility is merely another form of abandonment. As the sun crossed its diurnal arc and began its descent toward the western horizon, Alexander gathered his companions for a conversation he knew would be decisive. Seated in the boat that floated gently on the calm waters of Loch Ness, far enough from the creature not to disturb it yet close enough to still observe its graceful movements, the captain began to articulate thoughts that had been forming since the moment he had recognized the cub in the waters of the river. His voice carried the weight of someone who had understood something fundamental about the nature of the responsibility that comes with knowledge and power. Alexander spoke of the paradox they faced. They had discovered something extraordinary, a creature that most people would consider impossible, living in a natural sanctuary that seemed to have been designed specifically to shelter it. But with that discovery came a terrible responsibility: how to protect that creature from the predatory nature of humanity. How to ensure that sacred place would not be transformed into a spectacle where hunters and the curious would come to capture, kill, or simply disturb a form of life that deserved to live in peace. History was replete with examples of how humanity had destroyed what it did not understand, of how fear and greed had driven countless species to extinction and led to the desecration of sacred places. Sostrato raised the inevitable question: should they simply keep the discovery secret, never revealing to anyone what they had witnessed? But Alexander pointed out the fundamental flaw in that approach. Other people lived in that region, fished those waters, and would eventually encounter the creature themselves. The creature itself, with its spectacular leaps and resonant cry, would hardly pass unnoticed for long. Absolute secrecy was not a viable option. What they needed was something more subtle, more strategic. They needed to control the narrative, to shape the public perception of the creature in a way that would protect rather than condemn it. Helena, whose intuition frequently captured nuances that others missed, understood immediately the direction of that reasoning. She suggested that they needed to create a legend, not founded on lies, but grounded in observable truth, shaped in a way that would inspire reverent respect rather than predatory greed. To present the creature not as a defenseless victim that any hunter might attempt to capture, but as a powerful guardian of that sacred place, a being that lived in harmony with the lake, yet which could become dangerous if provoked or threatened. In this way, people's natural curiosity would be tempered by a healthy fear, creating a protective distance that would allow the creature to live relatively undisturbed. Alexander then shared the understanding that had crystallized within him as he watched the creature celebrate its arrival at the lake. That creature was not a monster in the traditional sense of the word. It was simply a living being seeking what all living beings seek: a safe place to exist, sustenance to survive, peace in which to live without constant threat. But humanity, in its arrogance and ignorance, had the habit of destroying what it could not control or comprehend. The only way to protect the creature was to transform it into something that people would respect or fear enough to leave alone. They needed to present the truth, but the truth framed in a way that served a purpose greater than mere factual accuracy. Some framings of truth protect, others destroy. Wisdom lay in knowing the difference. Gradually, a consensus emerged. They would return to the village of Inverness and share the discovery, but in a carefully calculated manner. They would not speak of a vulnerable cub that had found a safe home. They would speak of a powerful creature of the ocean depths that had chosen the sacred waters of Loch Ness as its dominion, an ancient guardian that lived in peace, but which ought to be respected and never provoked. They would transform the truth into legend, not to deceive, but to protect. And they hoped that that legend, carefully cultivated, would endure long enough for future generations to learn to coexist with the mystery rather than destroy it. The return to civilization. There are journeys that are traveled in one direction only. The River Ness they were descending that evening was physically the same they had ascended that morning, but they were not the same people descending it. The return journey along the River Ness unfolded in a contemplative silence very different from the expectant tension that had marked the voyage upstream. Each occupant of the boat processed in their own way the magnitude of what they had witnessed and the responsibility they now carried, not as a burden that weighed upon them, but as a charge that elevated, that kind of responsibility which, when genuinely accepted, does not diminish those who bear it but expands them. The river, which that morning had been a corridor of mystery and possibility, had become a passage of return between two worlds: the sacred, untouched world of Loch Ness and the civilized world of Inverness with all its human complexities. Alexander rode with his muscles executing the familiar movements while his mind worked through the details of how they would present the discovery, choosing each word that would be spoken, anticipating each possible reaction, mentally constructing the narrative that would need to be at once truthful and protective. Sostrato eventually broke the silence with the concern they all shared, but no one had yet put into words. What if the attempt to create a protective legend failed? What if, rather than inspiring respect, the story only attracted more hunters and the curious transforming Loch Ness into a battleground? Alexander acknowledged the legitimacy of the concern, but argued that the alternative, complete silence, was equally risky and likely unsustainable. When they finally reached the Bay of Inverness, night had fallen completely, but the village was far from asleep. Bonfires burned along the shore, figures moving in the shadows, clearly awaiting the return of those who had set out at dawn on a mysterious errand. Baker was among those waiting on the beach, his figure stooped but still imposing, illuminated by the dancing light of the flames, his eyes seeming even at a distance and in the half-darkness to pierce directly into what Alexander carried within him. The landing was met with a barrage of anxious questions. Alexander raised a hand in a gesture that asked for silence and promised answers, requesting that everyone gather around the largest bonfire. But before addressing the crowd, he asked for a private moment with Baker. The two men stepped away slightly, walking to a quieter stretch of the beach where the waves gently lapped the dark sand. There, beneath a sky filled with stars that silently bore witness to the human dramas unfolding below, Alexander told the elder everything he had witnessed, omitting no detail, framing nothing strategically, not yet applying the legend he had decided to construct. He shared the naked truth with someone who had demonstrated, through decades of honest observation, the capacity to receive it without distortion. And then, with that same honesty, he shared his concerns and the plan he had formulated. Baker listened to all of it without interrupting. When the captain at last finished, the elder remained in silence for long moments, eyes fixed on the dark horizon. Finally, he spoke. He said that Alexander had understood something most men never learn, that true power resides not in conquering or destroying, but in protecting and preserving. And he gave his blessing to the plan, acknowledging that sometimes legends serve purposes more important than the naked truth, especially when that truth might lead to the destruction of the extraordinary. The seed of the legend. There was a specific art in what Alexander was doing around that bonfire, and it was not simply narrating, it was founding. He was founding, with words chosen in the heat of the moment yet meant to endure far beyond it, something that needed to be more resilient than any physical structure any architect could build. With Baker's approval secured, Alexander walked deliberately to the center of the circle formed around the largest bonfire, where the dancing flames cast dramatic shadows that rendered his figure still more imposing. Every eye turned toward him. Children clutched at their mothers' skirts. Men hardened by years of fishing in dangerous waters leaned forward. And even the village dogs seemed to sense the importance of the moment, falling quiet rather than barking. Alexander began his narrative not with the journey of that day, but by returning to the epic battle in open sea. He recalled details already known, yet added layers of meaning that had gone unnoticed. He spoke of how the creature had not attacked at random, but had defended something precious. He described the moment they had caught the cub in their nets and the conscious choice to release it rather than keep it as a trophy. Each word chosen with care, each pause calculated for maximum impact, building a narrative that would prepare the minds of his listeners for the revelation to come. Then, with the skill of an ancient bard weaving a new myth, Alexander described the journey of that morning, the colossal shadow abandoning the salt sea, winding its way upriver with unmistakable purpose. The decision to follow that mysterious presence through the sacred lands of the Highlands, ascending the River Ness to its source. But here, subtly, he began to shape, not distorting the truth, but choosing which aspect of it to emphasize. The creature was not presented as vulnerable, it was presented as powerful, deliberate, sovereign in the choosing of its dominion. The cub became the guardian, not because Alexander lied, but because both things were true simultaneously, and the second protected where the first would have made the creature easy prey for human cruelty. When he described the arrival at Loch Ness, Alexander painted an image of majesty and primordial power. The creature's spectacular leaps, which he knew to be the pure expression of a joy of arrival, were framed as declarations of territory, warnings to any who might be watching. The resonant cry, that hymn of jubilation which had moved Helena to tears, was presented as a roar of challenge, a sound meant to inspire caution. The truth remained, but its interpretation was carefully calibrated to serve a protective purpose. There was something sacred in that intentional shaping, because its aim was not to deceive, but to preserve. Alexander then paused dramatically, looking around the circle, making eye contact with several individuals. When he spoke again, his voice had dropped to a more solemn register, almost prophetic. He spoke of the responsibility that now rested upon all of them. They had been gifted with knowledge of something extraordinary. How would they use that knowledge? His proposal was clear. The creature should be left in peace in Loch Ness, its sanctuary inviolable. It was not a beast that any common hunter could challenge with impunity. It was an ancient guardian of the deep waters, a being that existed at the frontier between the natural and the supernatural, that lived in peace, but that must be respected and never provoked. Those who lived near the lake should cultivate a healthy reverence for its presence, acknowledging that they shared that land with something far older than human civilization. And so, beneath the starred sky of Inverness, with the bonfire's flames serving as dancing witnesses, the legend was born that would be known across the centuries as the monster of Loch Ness, not as a threat to be destroyed, but as a guardian to be revered. The eternal legacy. There are victories measured in battles won, and there are victories measured in centuries, in how long what was protected remained protected, in how many generations lived alongside the extraordinary without destroying it. Alexander, upon setting sail from Inverness, had won the second kind. The following dawn found Alexander once again at the prow of the Oasis de Loire, but this time the preparations for departure were real and final. His mission in Inverness was complete, not in the way he had imagined when he had decided to remain one more day, but in a form infinitely more meaningful. He had done more than simply protect a fishing village from a marine threat. He had planted the seeds of a legend that, if tended faithfully by future generations, might protect an extraordinary creature from extinction at the hands of a humanity not always wise or compassionate. Jacobus Stewart approached the captain with an expression of deep gratitude and genuine respect, that specific respect of one who recognizes in another the capacity to see beyond the obvious, to act beyond the convenient, to protect what most do not even perceive as needing protection. Alexander reiterated the importance of maintaining the narrative they had established, emphasizing that the creature's survival depended on the local people believing it to be simultaneously wondrous and dangerous, worthy of reverence but not of provocation. Jacobus, a wise man who understood the complexities of human nature, promised he would play his part, ensuring that future generations would grow up hearing stories of the guardian of Loch Ness, learning to respect its territory and to marvel at its existence from a safe distance. Helena joined Alexander on the deck, bringing 2 mugs of hot tea that steamed in the cold morning air. They stood side by side in comfortable silence, watching the village gradually awaken, smoke rising from chimneys, inhabitants beginning another day with that particular lightness of mornings after impossible decisions have been made and revealed, at last, to have been possible. Helena remarked softly that what Alexander had done transcended the quest for Excalibur or any other mission that had brought them there. He had demonstrated that true nobility resided not in epic conquests or accumulated treasures, but in the capacity to recognize when protecting was more important than possessing, when creating was more valuable than destroying, when the continued presence of something beautiful in the world justified the work of sustaining it, even when that work would be carried out by others in other times without their ever knowing it had been set in motion by someone who at that moment was gazing at the horizon from the deck of a departing ship. Sostrato asked whether he truly believed the legend would endure long enough to make a difference. Alexander turned to his friend with an enigmatic smile, that kind of smile that acknowledges the limitations of human knowledge and the impossibility of predicting the future with absolute certainty. He admitted that he did not know, that he could not know, but he had done the best he could with the tools he possessed: words, narrative, an appeal to both the fear and the sense of wonder in people. What he understood and tried to articulate was that legends possess a peculiar power. They persist not necessarily because they are true in the factual sense, but because they touch something deep in the human psyche that transcends mere rationality. The story of the monster of Loch Ness, if told adequately and transmitted faithfully, might touch that primordial sense of wonder that humans feel before the unknown. That recognition that the world still guards mysteries we need not resolve entirely in order to appreciate them. As long as people believed that something extraordinary inhabited those deep waters, they would keep a respectful distance, allowing the creature to live in relative peace. When the Oasis de Loire and the Alethea finally raised their sails and began to pull away from Inverness, Alexander allowed himself one last, lingering gaze toward the Scottish interior, where he knew the River Ness wound through the mountains until it reached the sacred lake. He could not see those distant waters from that point, but in his mind, he saw clearly the young creature swimming through its depths, exploring every subaquatic cave, every hidden grotto, learning the contours of a home that was finally its own. And he wondered, not for the first nor the last time, whether centuries hence, when his own name had long been forgotten, the legend he had helped create would still be alive, still shielding that creature and its descendants from human curiosity and greed. The truth Alexander would carry for the rest of his voyages was this: not all battles are won with swords. Not all monsters need to be defeated. Sometimes, the greatest victory lies in recognizing when two worlds, the human and the wild, can coexist if only we learn to respect the boundaries between them. That creature in Loch Ness was not a monster to be destroyed, but a guardian to be revered. A reminder that the world still sheltered wonders that transcended human comprehension. And as the sails caught the wind driving the ships toward new horizons, Alexander carried the quiet satisfaction of one who knows that, at least in that corner of Scotland, he had left the world a little better than he had found it. Where the hunt ended, the legend began, and some legends, forged with wisdom and compassion at the precise moment they need to exist, have the power to endure forever. In the next episode, the Spring of Memories in Amesbury awaits, and Needham has confirmed that the lunar alignment required to activate the dimensional portal is drawing near. Everything that has unfolded since Thule, the accord with the sea beast, the legend of Loch Ness, the banquet with Jacobus Stewart, the rescue of the Oasis de Loire, was, in retrospect, preparation for what is about to occur in the sacred grove half a day's walk from Amesbury. Not preparation in the sense of conscious exercises, but in the deeper sense, the progressive revelation of who Alexander and Helena are, of what they are capable, of what manner of wisdom inhabits them when choices are genuinely difficult. Excalibur will not assess combat skill. It will assess what has been demonstrated in Thule, in Inverness, at Loch Ness, when no one was compelling them, when the easier option was available and was consciously cast aside. The Spring of Memories will reflect all of it, and Alexander, finally pronouncing the sacred name with the resonance the chamber outside of time taught him, we'll discover that the sword which answers is not only the one resting in the ice of a distant past's grotto. It is the one that was earned, action by action, choice by choice, legacy by legacy, across the entirety of a journey that was always, from the very first moment, a single and continuous question. Who are you when no one is watching? And the answer that the centuries will keep.